Smart 24, driving business.
And of course, we are number one business channel in the region, and we bring you latest business updates concerning, of course, your daily business and day-to-day affairs, but also giving you opportunities that are in the region for you to exploit through the different markets. And today we are looking at financial markets, and of course, this is a basic segment where we get to analyze for you the different market opportunities in East Africa, in Africa, as well as in the rest of the world. My name is Anthony, and I am your host. Remember to follow me at Anthony Sebale on Twitter, and as well as at Smart24 TV Live, where you can catch the latest of business 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Now, the show is probably brought to you by Altex East Africa, and you can, of course, buy bonds in East Africa using your mobile phone. Now, currently with Altex, you can simply dial *292#, and following the prompts, you can be able to buy or sell the different financial instruments across East Africa. That is, of course, getting money off of your mobile money to the exchange, or from the exchange to your mobile money. Either way, it's possible. You can open, of course, starting at exactly 15 minutes past 8 a.m. and closing at 15 minutes past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. Altex East Africa doing something new. Now let's get to look into the different other stock performances here at the Uganda Stock Exchange. We've talked about Meme largely and have seen how many opportunities are out there. You can seek out, of course, these shares right now. They are available, and you can buy right now. The settlement time is within 2 to 3 working days, so you can be able to get those shares. Now let's get to look at MTN Uganda, who had a 279,000 volume that was traded. Now the MTN company has now made a year on the stock exchange, and of course there have been some ups and downs for the company, but it's been, of course, a successful year for MTN so far, and the company's stock is currently still valued at 180.0 Ugandan shillings, which was the opening and closing price on Friday last week. MTN Uganda has a total value of 4.03 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization on the stock exchange, and this makes it the second most valuable company on the stock exchange, and representing about 19.2% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equity market. Now, currently looking at when we look at the traded volume, they had a 279,700 shares volume that was recorded, which represented a turnover of over 50.3 million Ugandan shilling, coming second not only in volume but also second in turnover. The shares outstanding at the company are 22.4 billion shares, and about 4.03 trillion market capitalization is currently still maintained. When you look at the company's performance recently, there hasn't been much really of change. In the past 4 weeks, we haven't had any addition to the stock value or any subtraction. The stock has remained stagnant at exactly 180.0 Ugandan shillings per share there on the stock exchange. But apparently, when you look at their year-to-date performance, they are still, of course, lagging behind. And as the year ends, they are still counting losses of over 7.69% of their beginning or initial price for the year. They began the year with a price of 194.99 Ugandan shillings, approximately 195 shillings. Since then, they have lost 15 shillings, and this represents the 7.69% we are talking about here in value. And of course, that puts the position of the shareholder at a very high risk, especially those that entered this year. But also, even worse, those who bought shares during their initial public offer, they are still counting an even bigger loss of over 20 shillings because the company got on the exchange in December with a total price of 200 shillings, currently at exactly 180 shillings. It means every shareholder in the initial public offer has lost 20 shillings. Looking at their value on the stock exchange, they have maintained the third position, and they did maintain that during the Friday trading. And they, on the Uganda Stock Exchange, currently in the past 3 months, are the third most traded on stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange. MTN Uganda has traded a total of 6.36 million shares, valued at exactly 1.16 billion Ugandan shillings. Coming second place, not only when you look at the volume, it's coming in the second place in turnover at least 1.16 billion, behind Umeme, which has over 5 billion Ugandan shillings. Now, with an average of 100,874 traded shares per session and a volume high of 1.05 million shares per trading session, this was the top most volume they have had, 1.05 million. It was achieved on the 18th of October. The company still represents hope for the different shareholders within the company, especially coming into the year 2023. Early this month, the Airtel company, that is another telecommunications company, was supposed to be listing as well, but it didn't actually get to list because they said they were not able to list in the current market conditions, as well as provided the economic activity in the country. The company asked UCC to give them another whole year to prepare for their initial public offer. Of course, under the UCC Act that was amended 2020, the national telecommunication companies, so telecommunication companies within Uganda, are supposed to list at least 20% of their value on the stock exchange. Well, that aside, when you look at the summary of trading here, like I said, we did have just about 3 participants, actually 4. We did have MTN, Umeme, Stanbic, and Bank of Baroda. Bank of Baroda did not also appreciate in value, rather maintain their price of 85 shillings. Now, MTN Uganda, Stanbic Bank were the top movers, and the different gainers here as listed above. But we also did have, when you look at the general data, a very huge improvement in the market value here, over about 1 billion 18,258,300 Ugandan shillings was traded in total on the exchange, and a volume of 4.3 million shares was also recorded on the market. The current market capitalization of the Uganda Stock Exchange is 21 trillion Ugandan shillings on the stock exchange. And that's, of course, data courtesy of the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now let's get to cross over to Nairobi very quickly and get to see some of the big movements there on the Nairobi market. Remember, Nairobi Securities Exchange was one of the big gainers for the week in Africa, closing the week rather on Friday. And looking at the all-share index here, the index gained a 0.42 points value here on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, representing a 0.33% gain. But on aggregate, we had 47 companies participating in trading, which was an improvement as well from 40 to 43. That's the last 2 days of trading before Friday. And this day ended with 20 gainers, interestingly, with less losers at 16 in number. Now, Home Africa led the gainers with a 6.06% after appreciating to a value of 0.35 Kenyan shillings per share. HF Group as well gained a 5.98%, and Liberty Holdings appeared on the top 5 gainers list the second day in a row at a 5.19% gain, whereas British American Tobacco of Kenya gained a 4.55% of their stock value. British American Tobacco Kenya is appearing on the gainers list for the first time in a very long time. And we've seen the same for Uganda. They haven't had any activity, for example, at British American Tobacco Uganda. And so we are very excited to see actually British American Tobacco Kenya make it on the gainers list here, according to the Friday trades. Now on the losing side, TPS East African Serena led the bottom losers from the bottom after a loss of 8.33% to 11.0 Kenyan shillings per share. It was followed by East African Portland Cement Company at a 7.86% depreciation in price, and East African Cables at a 6.98% depreciation. The Total Kenya as well company lost a 6.53% of their price and closed amongst the bottom losers rather. Safaricom redeemed itself for the week and appeared still on the top movers list after trading a total of 4.61 million shares. And Kenya Power and Lighting Company also traded over 962,800 shares, and Nairobi Business Ventures at exactly 528,500 shares also appeared amongst the top movers. Equity Group Holdings appeared at about 472,900 shares volume. Now regarding the performance of the NSE market index or indices here at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, the index has climbed, the major index climbed by 0.42 points as mentioned and closed at 128.49 points on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and an overall currently year-to-date loss of 22.81% is being registered, which is a little less than at the beginning of the week last week. When you look at the NSE 20, on the other hand, it lost at 0.21%, generally because the top 20 companies did not appreciate as much, and so they did make it for the gaining list. And then when you look at the NSE 25, it did have an improvement of over 0.26% because it tracks 25 top companies. Now let's get to look into Home Africa, who was the biggest gainer for the day, and get to see what really is happening in Home Africa. Home Africa Limited is Kenya's only publicly traded property developer. Home Africa plans to expand into different African countries, and currently is found in East Africa, all over East Africa, and they do deal in construction of houses and different other properties. Now, the Home Africa Limited is currently the 59th most valuable stock on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, with a total market capitalization of just 142 million Kenyan shillings, which represents 0.0071% of the entire equities market in Nairobi. When you look at their ticker symbol, they do trade under HAFR on the Nairobi Stock Exchange there. Their turnover for the day on Friday was a total of about 15,093 Kenyan shillings after having traded over 43,600 shares on the market. Currently, they have 405 million shares that are outstanding and a total market capitalization of over 142 million Kenyan shillings. Now, a gain of 2.94% has been registered on their weekly performance, on top of their daily gain of about 6.06%, and that of course definitely represents a very good trend for Home Africa. Home Africa, however, began the year with 0.4 Kenyan shillings and has since then lost over 12.5% in terms of year-to-date performance. Also, what could water down the excitation of the shareholders should be their loss of about 5% in the last 1 month at Home Africa. However, Home Africa is one of the top movers always on the market, with the 13th most traded on stock on the Nairobi Stock Exchange out of the 65 listed equities on the exchange. In the last 3 months, they have had about 5.22 million shares in total that have been traded in 902 deals on the market. That is Home Africa for you there. And now we'll look at a summary of the trades here before getting to cross over to other stock exchanges in Africa. And when you look at their current total market capitalization, Kenya still now boasts over 2 trillion Kenyan shillings market capitalization, which was a generally good improvement from 19 trillion at the beginning of the week. The decline, of course, was registered in the volume at a 20% decline and 49% decline in the turnover and about 9% decline in the number of deals. With this, about 8.19 million shares at exactly valued at 177 million Kenyan shillings were traded on last Friday, and that is straight from the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Now let's get cross over to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe Stock Exchange also had a wonderful day on Friday, and we are about to see why. Now, the all-share index of Zimbabwe Stock Exchange moved up by 324.56 points, which was a 2.16% gain there for the day. About 29 listed equities on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange participated in trading, ending the day with 16 gainers and 8 losers. Currently, First Mutual Properties led the gainers at a 15% share price appreciation, closing at exactly 11.5 Zimbabwe dollars. And then when you look at Exia Corporation, gained about 14.95%, and Ariston Holdings at 12.21%, as well as the NMBZ Holdings at about 11.24%. On the losing side, unfortunately, Amalgamated Regional Trading came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 13.49% and at exactly 11.33 closing price. Their First Capital Bank also lost 5.18%, and Seed Company also lost about 4.51% on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Generally speaking, Econet, Econet Wireless Zimbabwe recorded the biggest volume at about 1.97 million shares, and followed by OK Zimbabwe at 638,000 volume that was registered on the market. That's, of course, bids coming in from Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Now let's look at Lusaka, the new entrant on AFX Stock Exchange as well. The company, of course, when you look at Lusaka Securities Exchange, this is the principal stock exchange for Zambia. Now, this exchange was established in 1993 and started business the following year. And since then, the Lusaka Securities Exchange has managed to diversify financial instruments on the market with equities, unit trusts, government, and corporate bonds as well. The Lusaka Securities Exchange All-Share Index was introduced later on in 1997 with a best value of 100 points. Now, this exchange currently, when you look at their last performance yesterday, they lost about 3.32 points on their All-Share Index, which was a 0.05% loss for the day. And when you look at the top gainers of the day, we had 5 participants, and the top gainer was Zambia National Commercial Bank with a total of 0.31% appreciation in value. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to cross over to the US stock markets as we wind up here on the market. And of course, remember, as we go to the end, we are of course sponsored by Altex East Africa. Altex is the #1 private stock exchange in East Africa, and of course expanding their wings to other African regions. They do help you to trade in treasury bonds, that is buying or selling, and they give you value for your money. Their interest rates are some of the best in the region, and they offer some of the best services also on their exchange traded fund, which is basically a couple of treasury bonds you can invest in at once. Altex East Africa doing something new. Now, when you look at the US stocks, actually, there was a little bit of slump on the US market, with the S&P 500 losing about 1.11% for the closing markets on Friday, and closing at 3,852 points. The Dow declined by 0.85%, closing at $32,920 US, whereas the Nasdaq closed at a 0.97% depreciation, closing at 10,705 points. And that's it from the US stock markets. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and watching Smart24 TV. You can always follow me on Twitter at Anthony Savali, and follow Smart24 TV at Smart24 TV. I will catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.